So I'm just ready to pull the engine out here. So you can see the harness is tied up. More than less, we got everything out of the way. The AC lines are the only things left, and then we have a couple wires. So this harness back here, sticker harness, we had a 10mm bolt holding it to the manifold. Unbolt that, and then we go under. You can see from that thicker harness, it comes up to the solenoid up here, and then we follow this wire right there by the engine mount. That goes into the oil level sender. So those two need to be disconnected because we do not want to rip the wires out, because remember that harness stays on car, doesn't go with the engine. So the other thing is the starter is going to stay inside as well. It's not going with the engine, so we got to be careful pushing that out. And the last thing obviously is going to be the AC lines in the front. So we'll go ahead and remove all that, and then I'm going to get the flywheel, the automatic transmission flywheel, bolted up here. And remember, that's primarily just because we're going to need that to keep the crankshaft or counter hold the crankshaft while we're doing some work, if we do work on the front of the engine. Okay, so we got the engine out. Here it is in its glory. Now I am using the 1/2 ton heavy duty stand that I have. And as you can see, it is still on the engine stand, just because this is an inline 6, and I have used the stand for my old Nissan engine, which was a 4-cylinder, and it worked fine. But this thing is twice as heavy, it's longer, and it is definitely just sketch to leave it on one of these stands. So if you want to have it on like a rotisserie style stand, you probably have to upgrade to a much stronger stand. But for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it on the hoist and on the stand at the same time, and then I'm going to rotate it using both pieces. So if it's going to rotate to the side, we have the hook here on the engine, and that hook would essentially be on this side, and then there would be, the tension will still be on here. So we got the front end tension of the hoist here, and then the tension on the back is with the stand. So this is a lot more secure, not sketch. So I think it'll be fine to have it in this combo, but got my work cut out for me. So you can see this thing is desperately in need of a wash. I mean, it is just filthy. Look at that. It's just years and years of grime and oil and grease and whatnot that is just built up. So yeah, gonna go ahead and get this washed. It's gonna be kind of cumbersome because I have to roll this and that at the same time to get it outside of the garage. The other thing that I wanted to do really quickly is just hit this with some Simply Green and degrease that cross member and all of this. The plan is really just to degrease all of this, clean it, wash it, and then this car will remain out of sight for a bit while I kind of focus on the engine. And then I think we'll make a tally on everything that needs to be replaced on the engine, any parts whatsoever, and then I'll order that in. And then while those things are coming, I'm going to go ahead and focus on cleaning up the wiring on the engine bay here. So I'm not going for a wire tuck. I'm just going to keep it as OEM as possible. I want to clear up all of these really ghetto AC lines that were in place. As you can see, I have the AC seals as well. That's all going to have to be replaced. And really just cleaning up the wiring on this side. The rest of this is factory, so I'm not going to touch it. but I definitely want to degrease it because it is just nasty in there. So that's the plan at the moment, or at least the plan of attack. I'll make a tally either today or tomorrow or whenever I have time of all the parts that I need to get for the engine, and then that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna wash that, hit it with Simply Green, get that cleaned up. Then I'm gonna get the engine oil drained out of this thing because it's still full of oil, because I don't want to, you know, move this thing around, have that oil slosh its way back up and start leaking out the valve cover. And, you know, because oil, you know, these seals up here are designed to hold pressure, but not the entire like 5 quarts or so that's in the engine right now. So that's the plan of attack. And I'm also going to have to go around, I forgot to mention this, I got to cap off the rest of these lines. I mean, this is water, so it's not that big of a deal if it gets in there, but, you know, we don't want water getting in our fuel distributor and stuff, so that's all going to have to get capped off. So same method that I've been using these little red caps that I have in the vacuum lines. So you can see the AC lines are capped off, power steering lines are capped off, fuel lines are capped off. The coolant lines are also capped off, primarily not because I don't care about, you know, water can get in, but it's more this thing's going to be outside. I don't want any animals like sneaking their way in here and trying to lick any of the coolant. So there should not be any traces of coolant anywhere out here. So it should be pretty safe to kind of leave in store. So yeah, that's the plan of attack. So let's do it. So I'm just using a pre-mixed concentrate of Simply Green. I've used this stuff before and it's worked really well for degreasing. It's not aggressive, which is great, so it won't damage or eat the paint. W130 right there. You can see the thickness, quite black. I mean, that's not always indicative of the dirt of the oil, how dirty it is. I think this only has like 1,000, 2,000 kilometers on it, not much, but gotta get it out to get the oil pan off. And I was gonna do an oil change before it blew up anyway, so go figure. Okay, so just finished pressure washing the engine bay. It by no means is perfect. You can see there's still some grease and grit down there, but you can see, you know, you got to be careful because the paint in here is just super soft. So it's really easy to blow it off with a pressure washer. But by any means, we got really like all the loose stuff off, and then we've got the condenser coil all cleaned up here, which is great. Sway bar was all oiled up, and now that's clean for the most part. So I was in here looking at the motor, and look at this. See that? You see how there's no screw there? So this is like a harmonic, almost like tensioner. So that little shock absorber in there is actually supposed to be connected right here, and this is the tension wheel. I don't know how this thing even has any, I mean, this is pretty loose, but it's not that bad. I don't know how this has had any belt tension, to be honest. I mean, I guess, to be fair, you do tension it from this bolt up there, which will shift this bracket up and tighten it, but there's been no dampening on the belt like it's supposed to, so that bolt is missing. I have no idea where it is. That's a complete first, but anyway, we got it fairly cleaned up. As you can see, there's no more grease all over the block, and everything in the block looks like it's a natural blackish yellow color. I'm not really sure what the factory color spec is for the block, but everything looks to be in order. I didn't really bother cleaning the oil pan because it's being replaced. But yeah, it looks a lot better than it was before. It's not perfect. This would be a good dry ice candidate. Got most of the grit off and grease, but the stuff that's really baked on, you really can't get off. This is okay because that's been greased before, but you know, it'll clean up most of it, but like you'll have stuff like this and, you know, areas that if you don't have a dry ice blaster, you really can't get off. But again, I don't really mind too much. I'm not going for a showroom level engine. I just want it to be clean. So when I work on it, I don't get covered in, you know, grit and grime every time I touch it. So plus I don't have a dry ice blaster. So I think that's the biggest reason I haven't done that. Buried in the engine. So the Lord only knows what all's been done to this poor thing. So we'll make sure to get it right. And this actually cleaned up to be white. I thought this was okay. So it's a new day. We got the motor out. As you can see here, it is on the stand, and we're off to a great start. So I ended up taking off the thermostat housing off camera, which is located right here because I'm supporting it up with this chain. It is on a stand, but like I said before, this engine's pretty long and heavy. I don't feel safe with it just on the stand, so I'd prefer to have this. And as you can see, look at that bolt right there, what's left of it. 2 bolts broke, but we're planning on replacing the water pump, and I have extra bolts, so it's not the end of the world, so I'm not going to bother drilling these out. So you can, yeah, thermostat's going to get replaced, water pump, and basically I'm just going to go through the engine. I'm not going to replace any pistons or rods or anything crazy like that. There's no need. That's too far, but we are going to just go ahead and replace everything like the engine mounts and things that are already here. So there's going to be a lot of while you're there items as we're going through this. So I think the plan of attack is going to be to remove the belt. I'm going to go ahead and remove all of the accessories. There's no need for them to be on the engine. I'm not going to be rebuilding any of these things, but I might as well just take them off. And then we'll see. Maybe I'll get crazy. I'm trying to keep myself from going too crazy, but I'm really thinking about creating an electrophoresis tank so that I can zinc plate these. Zinc and then chromate. Zinc and follow up with chromate on all these parts, because that was, I believe, what the original gold finish was. So if I can get some of this pitting off and clean it up, I might make a tank, and then we can go through the process of how to do that. It's a tedious process for sure, but it'd be nice to have these. You can see how shiny it is, to just have all these lines and bolts and everything look like that. I think it'd look really cool, including the valve cover bolts. This valve cover is made out of magnesium. So fun fact, magnesium, when it lights on fire, it is super dangerous, but it takes a bit to get it going. But yes, these are magnesium valve covers. They're super light, but it makes them a nightmare to paint. Usually people powder coat them, but we're going to take a stab at stripping this down and etching it, and then maybe seeing if we can restore it a bit. I mean, the paint isn't awful on it, but it isn't great either. I think it'd be nice to have like a black with a silver on the stripes here. The other thing with magnesium coatings is the casting is very rough. I mean, look at this. And that's just the process of casting. That's just, you know, there's no real way around that. So usually people put like a thicker coat on or something just so you don't see the imperfections in the casting. You can see it all through here. These are all imperfections in the casting, not actually the paint, or I'm assuming they powder coated or some sort of really tough paint on this before. So yeah, I'm like trying my best here not to go crazy on this, but I don't think I can help myself. I think we're just gonna go crazy and do quite a lot of work. When I get the oil pan off, I'm gonna see if, you know, if I see any plastic bits from the timing chain guides. I'm really not planning on doing the timing chain or the guides. If I don't see any wear or damage on them, I should be able to see them from the bottom, and I have looked at it from the top and it looked fine. So we'll make a call there. I don't think it'll be necessary to go that far. These timing chains and guides on these are pretty stout, so I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, so here's the new oil pan. It's just a used oil pan that I picked up. It's in great shape. They haven't cleaned the gasket material off, so definitely have to clean the mating surface on this as well as mine. So we have that, which is good. It's obviously better than mine with all the cracks in it. Though I guess if you really didn't care, you could technically run this, but you got to keep in mind that your transmission bolts up to this, and this is completely severed through. So probably not the best of ideas. But yeah, so I think let's just get to this. Okay, so now with our belt out of the way, what are we looking at here? So on the M103, as you can see, we kind of have like it's not kind of, we have a screw base like tension system. So as you're unscrewing or screwing this tensioner up here, that actually applies tension on the belt. The dampening comes from the shock like absorber here, which was not connected at all, which we covered earlier. Right here is our water pump. So One way to check the water pump for, if it needs to be replaced is there any play in the bearing? As you can see right here, I don't know if you can hear it, but I can definitely feel a little bit of play. So I wouldn't say this water pump is, completely toast, but it's one of those things that Murphy's Law, we don't replace it, we put it back in the car, it's gonna blow out. It's gonna be so much easier to replace it now than on the car. It's definitely got a little bit of play, spins just fine. So our water pump, which is responsible for pushing the coolant water mixture throughout the engine, when we pull this off, we'll get more into depth of it, is located here. We've got our tensioner here, our power steering pump, and our SLS pump, remember it's a tandem pump, is right here. AC compressor, this is off the crankshaft, so this is our harmonic balancer. This is our fan pulley. Seems to be in decent shape. Our alternator, and just an accessory wheel here, another pulley. So that's pretty much the layout of the engine. Okay, so here's where I am right now. I can either remove the power steering pump from this bracket here. This is just a big aluminum bracket that is responsible for the AC compressor and the power steering pump. But I'm thinking I might be able to just remove the bracket from the engine and take the power steering pump with it. But now that I think about it, I could probably clean the pump a lot better if it's separate from the bracket. So actually we're gonna do it the conventional way and remove the pump from the bracket, but I do need to take care of this crossover pipe for the SLS system. So I gotta see if I can snake that crossover pipe over, or if it's just easier. I guess it'll be easier for me to pull the line off here and then leave it with a crossover pipe and then just take the pump off. So yeah, I think that's the plan of attack. Okay, so as I was saying, here's the tensioner. As you can see, here is that rod that I was talking about. So as you tighten it, this washer pushes up on the housing up there and will push this down. As it pushes this down, it applies tension onto the belt. So really simple system. A lot of older cars use this kind of system. Newer cars have like almost like a spring-loaded mechanism where you put the key on it and you use a wrench or something and push it down to relieve the tension, remove the belt, and then it tightens. Older cars tend to use a screw-on or screw method here that applies tension to the belt. So got a bracket out of the way, the big old bracket. We got our power steering pump and alternator and compressor here. As you can see, I'm really gonna try to get these nice and clean now that they're out of the car. Granted, we are replacing some of these. So that being said, just kind of keeping track, like you saw in the video, if you have any bolts like the AC compressor bolts, spacers, etc., put them back on the part so you don't have to sit there and guess and check where things went. I highly recommend even like these bolts and stuff. And if we end up zinc plating these guys, then, you know, obviously I'll have to do them piece by piece and mark them so I don't lose anything. But I think all of this would be really nice if we can get this cleaned up as well as possible. Again, it'd be best if we could dry ice blast all of these because it would get them back into their cleanest position. But I don't think, I don't have a dry ice blaster. It's not that I don't have one, so I won't be able to do that. But now we have pretty great access to our water pump here. So that's gonna be next on the list. I think I'm gonna go ahead and just remove the water pump. And then we'll have the shock, and we're almost near the end. Pretty much all the accessories are off the car at this point other than the water pump. So looks like the water pump should be 4 bolts. They're probably 12 or 13 mils. So we got 3 over here, and then I think there's 1 buried in there, and then it should pop out. We're probably gonna lose a little bit of coolant because there's definitely still some coolant in the block. But yeah, just so far so good. So when you're removing the water pump, you have these 13 mil bolts pretty much on all 3 sides. So there's 3 of them, right? Come around to the front, so you do have to remove the pulley to get to access to this. That's a 6mm hex. And of course there's a hex in the worst spot, the least accessible spot out of the entire part of the car. Now I wanna know if the engineer who made this is watching this, why did you guys put a hex there and 13 mil everywhere else? Because the thing with hexes, they're so easy to strip, and if you don't have a perfect key or anything, you'll ruin it. So hopefully that doesn't happen, because then I'm gonna have to, I don't know how I'm gonna get the water pump out, because if that thing strips, yeah, that's not gonna be fun. Because trying to cut that out, or, you know, I don't even wanna imagine it. So let's hope that we can get this off without stripping. Come on. Okay. Yes. Okay, so I had to remove the crossover pipe for the SLS in. There was a crossover bolted here and here. That pipe is over there now. So I got that out of the way just so I could give myself a little more space. This is definitely one of those bolts where you don't want to, you know, sometimes you're like, oh, it's fine, I don't need to remove it. No, remove everything that gets in the way of it. Oh, okay, I'm just so happy it didn't strip. This is the type of stripping we don't want today. There she is. Hex key, all right, look at that. Ugh, rust. Okay, so yeah, you can see now why I'm replacing this. This seal is completely flat with the block. I mean, this thing could leak at any moment. I'm sure the pump, it's got a little bit of shaft play. It's a little difficult to move too, huh? Actually, I think you can rebuild these pumps too. Check this out, so you can take it apart, which is really cool. But these hoses, that was another reason I didn't want this hose to like burst one day. Kind of crazy that, you know, you just have such a tiny hose. But yeah, look at, there's a seal in the block. Oh man, yeah, these seals are done. They are done. Actually, is that a seal in the block? Or is that just like a... I'm going to figure out what the hell that is. That might just be remnants from this seal. Interesting. Okay. Oh, water pump's off. Oh, wait.